What's up, everybody? This is The Reclamation. Today's episode is all about human design. So pull up your charts, have that information ready. You can go to mybodygraph.com and you can find that information for free. You need to know your birth date, your birth time, and your birth location. Yes, much like astrology, human design pulls from our energetic imprint. We're going to spend 2 episodes here in human design. I wanted to bring in 2 different teachers in this space as it is like relatively new. 1987 is when it was first downloaded to a man named Ra Ura Hu. But, we've kind of not allowed it space until more recently. And of course, we've got social media and all of those things that help really launch ideas into the world. So if you are new to human design in the space of like, I have never even heard of this before, why don't you just give a good listen to the episode? If you are new to human design, you've heard of it, but you don't have your chart ready, you can go mybodygraph.com, pull your chart, have it ready so you can follow along. You can have some of this information that we talk about so that you can apply it like pretty right away, which is cool. So we'll spend 2 weeks here with 2 different teachers. Human design is this system that blends all these ancient wisdoms and modern science. You've got astrology, the I Ching, you've got the Kabbalah and the chakra system alongside in this batter that is held together by quantum physics and genetics. Those are like the eggs to your batter, right? Created in 1987, like I said, by a man named Ra Uru, who he channeled this wisdom. It was just given to him. So you can take that for what it's worth. For me, definitely started out as a skeptic because of that. I started out as a skeptic. However, being about 3 years now into human design and applying it to myself, trying to live more aligned to my energy, doing things that feel really good to me, and showing up in ways that are way more aligned to me has brought me more peace and joy as well. And this is a massive piece for me. I can see the other, meaning people outside of me, my relationships, anybody, someone walking down the street, and the judgment that I used to hold for them for not doing things a certain way have all gone. There's a lot more curiosity there and a hello awareness that, yeah, we're all different. Like I say a lot on this podcast, we're all different. We know this. Here are some ways that we can really dive into that allowance, though. We know we're all different. Why don't we allow each other to be different? That's a real conundrum. So, human design, it offers a blueprint or a map for understanding our unique energy and how we interact with the world. In this episode, I have invited Brianna Anderson to share her story and her expertise and guide us in these principles and how it can illuminate our authentic paths and help us align with who we truly are and how we're designed to thrive. This is where we can get caught up, right? It's like, oh, yes, something else that will help me to reach peace, will help me to reach inner joy, help me to reach success. Brianna says this herself in the episode, which I really, really love that she highlights. We're not approaching this as something else to tell you who you are and who you are not necessarily. And if you're learning this to see where is it that I'm broken so that my life can be different, she really highlights not approaching human design this way and having it be an invitation to invite into your life an awareness to what's already there. She says so many times, so beautifully, and so like right directly for me, you don't have to try hard to be who you are. It's there. It's almost like we have to just understand the things that are covering it. Okay, so Brianna actually has a certification in December that she is holding. It's a 6-month certification program, Human Design and Human Design and Gene Keys. You can find this information in the show notes. You can find Brianna in the show notes. like normal, like per usual. That's all I've got to say. We're going to go. We're going to get into this episode. I hope you enjoy and stay tuned for next week. I will have another human design expert come on and also share her perspective of human design and the things that she likes to highlight within the system. All right, let's go. This episode is for anybody who either A, has heard of human design and is curious, or knows a teeny bit, or B, has no idea what human design is. And I want to add a third group in there. It's like people who have heard of human design, maybe it's been pushed at them by people they know.
Yep.
and they're like, "You know, not another thing to tell me who I'm supposed to be." You know what I would, you know? Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like those three categories. Would love for you to just go ahead and dive in. Take about 10, 15 minutes. Talk about who you are, where you come from, and how you got into human design.
Absolutely. Yeah, that question is so beautiful. So I'm Brianna, and human design found me through the universe, kind of knocking at my door 3 times, like you.
Yes,
And
three times. Yes.
yep, 3 times is my rule.
Yeah.
And I even had a teacher who was teaching me for free at the time this information, and it didn't resonate. So unfortunately,
That's
I,
interesting, actually.
it is.
I
And I
would,
share that very openly
yeah.
because it's not that you have to be a love of the information right out the gate, but I actually didn't start listening to answers until I went through the darkest night of my life. And so that's when I was like, God, show me who I am. And I'm not asking. It was actually a command. It was like the darkest of the darkest. I'm already done. So at this point, like you either play with me or I don't know what that consequence is, but I'm not asking. So show me who I am, like as a command. And I was in Bali, Indonesia at the time, actually. And I had the short version is I had gone through my second divorce. I had left my corporate career. I had stepped aside from religion. I had basically done the Phoenix all in one fell swoop. I was like, hey, we're done, we're done. So after that entire process, as I'm saying, show me who I am through the darkest night of my life, I see an Instagram post from a girl and she's talking about human design. And I can't explain it. I just knew. I knew it was the next step. And it's because and I feel it now. You just know. So that felt like an energetic vibration through my body, like pay attention, red flags, like we're right here. Because it's like I want answers, but I'm not being aware that they're already in my face. And so human design showed up. And yeah, so if I could tell anyone my story behind the curtains in one sentence, I took her course to basically start a business. I thought maybe if I learn about myself, then I will be able to make money. And if I can make money, because I just quit my career, then I'll be able to build a home life I actually want. So that was my thinking at the time. And God's like, no, you're actually supposed to teach this. And
Yeah.
so here we are. Now it's something that I just help other people see. Like you don't have to resonate with it at first. In fact, if you don't, that's normal. It's so normal.
I love that you shared that. I think it's really important too, because I have learned in my own journey, I would judge those things I didn't resonate with
Yeah. Uh-huh.
as wrong, period. Now, there's a distinction here. Wrong, period.
Uh-huh.
Like if it's not resonating with me, it must be wrong
Right.
for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And or it must be wrong. Once I started to like heal those judgments, it turned into if it doesn't resonate, it's not for me.
Oh,
But
yes.
now I'm in this place, as you've discovered, is if it doesn't resonate, today, it doesn't resonate. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it's evil. It doesn't mean that it's harmful. I would go into fear if something doesn't resonate with me. And
Right.
I would just put that as like a big fat no.
Uh-huh.
Um, And I think that as you explained how you knew this was your path, you just knew,
Uh-huh.
which I'm sure as you discovered more human design, that totally made sense how you knew.
Yes, yeah. And I think the knowing part, because I've had people ask, but how did you know? And the most simple answer is I fell in love with a passion. Like, get this, for
Mhm,
the first time in my darkest night, I had fallen in love with the subject. So if that's
mhm,
all I hung on to, and whether it was divine timing or not, like I believed that. So I want to address the part where you said if this is being pushed onto people, um, it's actually where I have a fire in my belly to teach this. And
ah,
I actually separate, and I don't like the word separation, but I stray from how normal people tend to see human design or teach it because I believe that it's incorrect. And so I actually will bluntly tell people if it feels like BS, it is. And if it doesn't
ah,
feel like BS, it's not. Because while I teach this, I will never put your paradigm or consciousness in a box. In fact, it's the opposite. And I tell people human design is not a personality test and it is not something it's not a modality. But the internet will tell you like all these other things. And so we use discernment and I tell people they're just missing one word. It's you're a human by design. So just learn what that design could be and then play with it. So the energy of play is really where I love to anchor, like hook and go deep because that's where we start to see potentials. Like you're a human, so you don't need to be perfect. Now you're off the hook. So who and how do you want to be? Right. And so I really resonate with those people that are like, this just feels like another thing to tell me who I am. And that's when I say, as a teacher, that's because it's being taught incorrectly. So
oh.
I hope that gives someone relief.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And so now you have me so
Mhm.
intrigued about the ways that you do teach it. You are human by design. And so
Mhm.
you just have to figure out like what your design is and how
Mhm.
you want to play with it. I love that so much. Okay,
Yes.
so you discovered human design through the universe just sending it your way until it was so big and bold you couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yes.
And you took the class to make money, essentially.
Uh-huh.
Or not essentially, initially.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like, tell me how to make money because I just left my corporate career with no net, like no
Yeah,
net.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I actually think that will resonate with a lot of people too. I'm in this space similarly to your journey. I got here through a friend, would never have done this myself,
Uh-huh.
but also feel totally like in my joy and in my passion in doing it. And so as I've understood more of my design, it makes sense. So go ahead and give us an overview of human design, how you approach it when you teach the beginner.
Yeah, for sure.
And the skeptic.
I love me a good skeptic. I actually love teaching men. I'm a little bit biased because they
Ooh.
always say, show me the science, show me the proof.
Mhm, yeah.
And I love it. So human design, the way I see it, is it's a system. It's a very intricate system. So most people already know parts of the system. For example, people will get education on the chakra system. That is
Mhm,
a part of human design.
mhm,
Most people know about astrology. That is one leg of the entire system. So there are different intricate systems woven together that make up a very complex human. And human design is like the umbrella. I tell people it's an umbrella. So under that umbrella, there are so many different working pieces, right? If you were building a tent but wanted to kick out this leg, it would crumble. And
mhm,
so people feel like they learn about numerology and the Enneagram and all of these things. And I say, actually, it's all interwoven. So the basic answer is that human design, you as a human, have many truths, and its ancient knowledge is weaving in astrology, the chakra system. We have a lot of people that are in love with the epigenetics and the quantum physics, so that's all
mhm,
there. Then you've got your gene key system, which is built on the hexagram. And there's so many different systems that are into it. So I like to tell people don't get lost by the verbiage. Just know that if you feel like you haven't had the whole picture, that's why, because you haven't looked at the whole system or picture. So it's really just ancient and knowledge sciences and spirituality. In my opinion, it's literally where spirituality and science answer questions that aren't contradictory. So we're not going to fight religion with science. We're not going to kick out science and only be with religion, but we're going to take the spiritual aspect and make it very tangible and real in the 3D world. So I tell people who are skeptical, it's kind of like It's kind of like an idea in your imagination. The whole goal is to bring it into the material world. So, what I do is I help them understand their human design and then what they want to do about it in the material world. So, for the skeptic, the very first thing I always say is go learn about your life's work through genekeys.com, and you'll start to see that that is a part of the human design system. But in my opinion, it has the most simple words to validate a human experience who is covered in shame and guilt and those lower
Mm,
vibrations.
mm,
So the first place to start is why are you a badass? Not why are you horrible? Because if we can rewire your brain to look like for the positive and where your talents are, my favorite thing to teach business corporate is look, you just got to know what your people's talent is and then feed them more of their talent. And then your return of investment, I mean, it's all there. But the simple answer is every one of us have a unique talent. We've just been taught out of it to believe that we're just the masses. While
yeah.
we're connected, we're still very unique.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, there's so many really cool things that you said there. And I like how you talk about not getting lost in
mhm,
something. And I think, because I really think from what I've seen, um, especially women,
mhm,
because we, in our effort to be perfect still,
yep,
we're healing,
yep,
but is there an underlying need to still be perfect? And then we find these systems that help us to understand ourselves, but still need to, like, I got to follow this system in a perfect way. I got to make sure that I'm doing it exactly right, which is still, it's out of, I think it's out of our unique energy when we're acting that way. We are still in the mindset of, in my opinion, what our education system
mhm,
serves to do is make us all the same,
mhm,
think the same way, have the same types of goals, and here's what's acceptable and what's not. And so, even in our healing, we can get caught in,
yes.
I got to do this exactly right.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love what you just said. It's very important for anyone, whether they're on stage one, two, or three. What you just said is actually my approach. So people don't leave a system, whether it's their schooling, education, or corporate, or the matrix, whatever word you want to choose for societal systems. People will not leave a system, no matter how bad it is, until they have a system in its place to
Mhm.
replace it, because that creates a sense of safety. And so, what I
Mhm.
do is I say, hey, if we're going to leave that system, let's get to know your system because that's with you for the rest of your life. So, if you can get really familiar with your system and how you operate and what your truth is energetically, then you will feel confident leaving that system. But you have to build that muscle. And that's all it is. It's just a muscle. And then you shave off the pieces you don't like, you incorporate the ones you do, but at least you're now able to run a race knowing that your confidence is stable. Like it's not
Mhm.
shakable. So thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that word up. It's like prime awareness right there.
So I have a direct question to you
Yeah.
on your experience with leaving systems.
Yes.
And so you mentioned how you had a faith
Mhm.
change
Yeah, for
system.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I also have gone through the same thing, and I did not really have
Mhm.
another system in place other than most of my family stepped away from the church.
Yeah.
And what happened was that we took what was going on in the system of our religion
Yeah.
and we created our own, and the same things were going on
Yeah.
because nobody had an awareness of something different being possible.
Yeah, for sure.
So we kind of created our own little cult again. So I'm wondering, when you left a system,
Mhm.
if there was something in place, and like I've homeschooled
Yeah.
all through all of my children, but I couldn't have done it differently unless there was already a model shown to me.
Yes.
So I'm kind of catching what you're saying. I like that analogy of w- when there's something else that will catch us.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, then we're more apt to changing
Changing. Yes. Yes.
our system.
I think if I know what you're asking, are you just asking like how to navigate that when you don't have a system in its place, or how I was able to navigate the faith change without a system?
Yes, if that's the way that you did navigate it, if there
Mhm.
wasn't a system in place,
Yeah, right.
because I'm not sure what was going on. Yeah, how did that go for you? And both
Yes.
things, both questions.
I've never been asked that on a podcast yet. So thank you. Because now I get to formulate an answer. So there wasn't a system. There wasn't. I think that's where self belief, yeah, I have goosebumps. Self belief was all I had. Self
Yeah.
belief was literally all I had. And it wasn't that, in my paradigm, it wasn't that God was being taken out of my ideology. In fact, it was the opposite. 'Cause now there was no man to rely on. So it really was a matter of being in the fire while being refined. So number one, I didn't have a
Mm,
system. The first jump I made in my consciousness was to leave routine and to go into ritual. And
mm,
so a lot of women, when they're trying to do it right, I love what you said, because I really wanted to do it right. But when I let go of just the consequences I thought would happen if I didn't do it right, that's when I started to self discover in a really beautiful way. Like, okay, cool. Like, I'm already experiencing my version of hell. So, and to be
mhm,
quite frank with you, there was no other option. But number two, when I started to read about my own designer, my own system and gene keys, what I discovered was that my life was on track. In fact, it was on track so much that I had words that validated that I would essentially have an awakening or wake up around the age of 30. I'm 29. So
oh,
there was so much validation in, okay, this process of sleepwalking is beautiful so that you can be a role model in your future later years. But without knowing that, it's kind of like someone spoon feeding you the words you need to hear, but you don't know you need to hear them. And
uh-huh,
so this system really eventually provided enough words where I was willing to look at the person in the mirror and be like, you're so perfect already. The
mhm,
attainment to perfection is what's driving you crazy, sister.
mhm,
So I think that's the best way to answer that, is going from routine to ritual, and then going from like, who am I, staggering self belief, to I'm fully confident now because I know how to source love from the inside out.
mhm,
And I think
mhm,
that's what most people are looking for. And so I say, I actually use human design and gene keys as an excuse, but my soul's message is to help people find love from the inside out. Because I've had
yes.
of the backwards reverse option.
No, I love that very much. I totally agree. I support that mission. I think for me in the reclamation is where that's where it starts is here.
Yes.
And we build that ability to love ourselves in fully our worth, our value, it's all inherent. We are loved. We are
Mm,
loved. And then can it go out of our body to
yes.
the world and the things that we're creating, the things that we're teaching, and it is changing already the world. And I'm just so here for it. So excited and curious about all the ways people are doing it. Human design is definitely
Mm,
a way, I like to call it a map,
yes.
to help guide people. Okay, so let's go into human design. What in the heck is it?
Cool.
And then, yeah, all of the pillars of human design.
The fun nuances.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I love the word blueprint. So human design is like the blueprint for what you came to this world with. So you can imagine it's like having a backpack and you came to this world equipped and you have all the tools that you need to fulfill your mission. In your backpack, though, you just have to know what the hell is in the backpack. You need to know
Mhm,
what your tools are, because you did come equipped. And most mamas, most entrepreneurs, even men, husbands, they don't know that they came equipped. So they're constantly looking for the next guru or the next lesson or the next whatever. And that's okay. That's great. But if you just knew what tools you were carrying within you, you would actually use them for yourself and then share them. So you would actually stop consuming and you would actually start serving. And most people, they don't go into service until they know like what they have to serve or contribute to the world. So, in my opinion, human design is the highest frequency to authenticity, because we're now aware that these are the tools I come with, and I don't have to feel shameful for seeing the world a certain way when you might perceive the world an entirely different way. So, the byproduct of learning this information even if you don't try to, is that your relationships heal dramatically. Because I tell people that your unclaimed gifts are actually a projected expectation. So when you don't claim your gift, you'll project it onto your spouse or your partner or your best friend and be like, you don't operate like I do. Why are you not showing up like I
Mhm,
do?
mhm,
Not knowing that's your gift. That's what you bring to the
mhm,
table.
mhm,
And so there's this transference of confusion and doubt. And a lot of us spend our lives in corporate jobs that we don't love until, like you said, we're like, okay, there's got to be more. So, human design is going to be able to tell you a person, your life's work. Like, what are you here to do? And I love this because it's never going to put you in a box or say, you should be a receptionist or you should be it's not going to give you the nuts and bolts of it, but it's going to give you enough curiosity for you to understand where you're going to thrive. And what's really amazing is that you have to remember this information has been with you since you've been born. So, human design is pulling information from a person's birth time, a person's birth location, and a birth date. And then it's going to astrologically tell you where the the nodes are when you were born. If I can make it more simple for a listener who's listening, it really is just the idea that in quantum physics, before we came into our bodies, there was all of this mass in space, outer space, just picture outer space. We were imprinted with certain neutrinos or certain gifts. And with those gifts, make up who we are genetically and who we are in a very complex world. So when someone pulls out their human design, it has the ability to tell you what your aura or your energetic, what's the word I want to use? Your blueprint is. So a lot of people don't know this, but you're not just operating on a physical level. You have to get behind that belief. Otherwise, people will be like, this is woo woo. So, to the skepticism or to the person who's skeptic, I would say there are lots of different things at play. So, when you look at your human design, it will say, okay, you might be a generator or you might be a projector. All that's telling you is that there is a very specific way in which you are designed to hit success without the forcing and the trying. But that goes against everything that we've been taught since we were little. We have to earn love. We have to prove our worth. We have to blah, blah, blah. But human design actually says, no, you just need to know how you specifically are designed to hit success. And then we try to accomplish that in the effortless way. There's still
mhm.
effort, but you're more aware. And so the last thing I would say when pulling a chart is that there are what's called profiles. Most people go their whole lives without knowing what their top four needs are. And a
Mhm,
profile in human design will address literally the needs of a soul. So when you look at someone's profile, someone who craves solitude and nature and intimacy will not necessarily be someone who is craving the public and
mhm.
large groups. And so I think there's so much validation in pulling what can assess and address your life's work. It can answer like your life's purpose. It can answer what you're here to master in this lifetime. It can answer so much. And then through that process of awareness, you decide like the actual details. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, it does make sense. And I wanted to tap in a few examples as
Yes.
I've worked through human design myself. You said that your relationships will change slash heal.
Uh-huh.
You said heal. I'm like some of them just changed to
I
be
love
more healthy, but it was healthy in separation versus healthy in togetherness. But
it. Right.
um, I use it to understand my children so that I can parent them according to who they are inherently versus who I am inherently.
I love
And
that.
the thing you said was so funny was the frustration that we'll have at another for doing something a certain way.
Yes.
I had a pet peeve of my husband's. I've been married 20 years now, but it was about 18ish years that I was like, oh my gosh. My pet peeve was that he took so long to decide things. And
Mhm.
I'm a projector, so I kind of just feel it. And he is a manifesting generator, and he really takes a bit to feel that yes or no response within him. But for 18 years, that drove me so bonkers. And the amount of energy I spent in frustration
Uh-huh.
and resentment and trying to make him make a decision right now, please. Not to mention all the things that I'm like, oh, all of these choices he made were
Yeah.
because I pushed him to it, you know?
Mhm.
I pushed him to it. And this man that I'm married to now is like not allowed to be who he is. And
Yes,
you know,
I
if
do.
think about that for yourself, if you and we are like our childhood and everything is like we're pushed to be someone other than ourselves.
Yep.
And so I woke to that and it's so like such an easy shift because all I did was become aware
Yes.
and so much changed.
Uh-huh.
So much. I didn't have to do hardly any sort of like really, oh, I got to be better work. It just I became aware. And
Oh.
so then when he does his thing, it's so allowed.
I
So
love that.
allowed.
I was just thinking, my authentic thought was, I can feel that you're a projector now that you say that.
Okay, hey everybody, we are going to take a quick timeout so I can tell y'all about TBM, which stands for to be magnetic. TBM is a neuromanifestation program that I have been doing now for over a year. I know. Manifestation is a hot buzzword right now, and there's a lot out there about the how, the what, the when, the where, and the why of manifesting. I actually love that. We are all different. I think it makes sense. There are a lot of different ways to go about anything, really. That being said, I am choosing to promote TBM. Not only is it science backed using neuroplasticity, EMDR, hypnosis, etc., to get you into alignment with your authentic desires, which means manifesting from the heart and the soul rather than the ego. But the program also supports my favorite theme, coming back home to ourselves. Outside of manifesting into my life the vibes that fit my authenticity, I've been able to uncover and heal so many layers of pain, shame, and conditioning that stood in the way of living a life where I feel whole and worthy inherently. Outside of any label, title, accolades, I'm worthy and whole because I just am. I am sharing TBM with you for that reason primarily. Coming back to ourselves, discovering our inherent worth, well, that is a reclamation worth living for. To learn more about TBM, check the show notes. I'll direct you to their podcast, a specific episode where you can hear all about the manifestation process. When you're ready to join the program with me, you can get 15% off the membership using my code MALIA, all caps MALIA, for 15% off. The link to the membership will also be in my show notes. Okay, love you all very much. Let's get back to the episode.
So, human design, there's 5 different types
Yeah,
of human design. And we're all so misunderstood in our different ways. And as a projector, it's just life changing. So, may I share something with you? Is that
please. Yeah.
so? Online, the internet will teach a projector that that they must wait for an invitation. Basically, that's how they're going to hit success. And I actually say BS, not true. Not
Oh
true.
my gosh, save.
And here's why I don't teach it. See, if it feels limited, it is. That's limitation.
Oh,
That's so like not truth. So let me tell you what spirit
mm,
told me through a projector. A
mm,
projector is so wise beyond our time that it's through the projectors that they will be able to guide humanity. It's no small thing. But the bitterness and the resentment happens when the projector does not create the mental space for their brilliance to be received. In other words, you no longer wait, you just create. So if you were to share something with me, you say, may I share something with you? Because I now see me and I now see that my knowledge is light years ahead of where you can conceptualize or understand things. And
mhm,
it's not because you're better than, it's not about hierarchy, but when you see
mhm.
yourself, you'll never wait, you'll always create. And this is what I mean. So your statement is actually what I just did with you. May I share something with you?
Yeah.
When you do that, you will always be received as brilliant and you will always be received and never rejected. You will never experience bitterness when you ask the question, may I share something with you? Because that information is so revolutionary. What you have to share will change an entire person's life. But what needs to happen is their consciousness needs to like kind of have an opening, a door, so that they can digest what's about to be received. Because to you, you're the fish in water. You're like, don't you see this way? And the answer
Mhm.
is no. And so I just wanted you to know that your brilliance just needs more space to be received, and you'll never experience your not self theme of bitterness. But it's not
Oh
to
my
wait,
goodness.
it's to ask, to create.
Thank you. Thank you. I think when I discovered that I was a projector, the most resistance came when I have to wait for an invitation. I have all of these ideas and I
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
feel like this is the information you need. There are definitely people in my life that I could see how I was just kind of like stabbing at them every time I was like offering advice. Um, so thank you for that awareness and just totally opening up possibility for projectors.
Yeah.
We need that opened to us.
Yeah, opened, right? Because your aura is penetrating, so you can't help it. So if people feel like you're in their business, you are. You're designed to be. But here's what's really cool is that who doesn't want that person? It's like the way I view projectors, it's like having your own expert in your back pocket. Like who wouldn't
Mhm.
want like that person? And so we're all conditioned in different ways, again, because society says so. So I love that you shared with your husband like how things were happening. So if it feels appropriate, I can give you a one-liner for each type.
Yeah.
Like a projector needs to create an invitation, and that's it. Um, so with
Create, not wait.
create an invitation. So you're like, here's all my
Mm.
ideas, and you're like, oh, friend, may I share what I see with you? And they're like, oh yes, please. How delightful of you to share your essence with me. And you'll never be rejected. But what happens is projectors, they just spew and they feel rejected. And so they shut down and they withhold
Mhm.
their love because they
Mhm.
know that they're brilliant. Why does the world not see that?
Mhm.
And so the number one need that a projector has is to be seen. They need to be seen and heard more than any other type does. So
Mhm.
it's really great. With generators, they're conditioned because I'm a generator. Their conditioning is that they don't respond because they don't want to ruffle feathers when they show their actual opinions. And so generators won't respond. They think they are, but they're not. So when you say, "Hey, do you want to do a podcast?" I'm like, "Uh-huh, yes." Like I'm responding, but most people have been taught out of their genuine opinion, and because the opinion is right or wrong, they won't respond. They'll actually silence it. So, response, in another simple way to say it is you're going to show your authentic fire. But most
Mm.
generators won't because it will ruffle feathers. It won't fit into people pleasing, especially with
Mm.
religious culture from my own background. I was afraid to be as blunt as I am because that just isn't the polite way to be. And so I had to unlearn that. I had to unlearn that blunt was going to hurt other people. And so generators believe that if they respond, it's going to actually hurt people.
Mm.
It's very,
Because their response is often contrary.
it's
Uh,
polarity. It's a yes or it's a no. And no matter what they choose, there's an opposite to it. So
Yeah.
it's the law of polarity. If I say yes to this, then there's a whole other group of people that are saying no. It's kind of like fear we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and your husband's a manifesting generator. And
Mhm.
so manifesting generators are not the same as generators, although they are categorized as such.
Mm.
Manifesting generators in my world, they're conditioned to believe that they have ADHD, they never finish anything, they're all over the place, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is, manifesting generators are not motivated by mastery. They could care less to master something. They don't give a flying damn about it, but guess what? They pretend they do. So here's the truth. Here's the truth. You love it? So here's my bluntness.
I'm having so many light bulbs.
Manifesting generators are not driven by mastery, but since you said the school system teaches them to read a book, finish a book, take a test on the book, blah, blah, blah. No, manifesting generators feel like most of the time their time is being wasted. And not only is it being wasted, but they don't feel like they're actually expanding. So their core driver is expansion, not mastery. So, in other words, manifesting generators from now on, today forward, need to be okay with being a bouncy ball. They're involved in this until they get bored. They're involved in this until they get bored. And all they care about is the expansion of how fast and how far they can go, not how well they can master. And
Yeah.
so, does that help with your
Oh,
husband?
Massively. So also, I don't know if it's a projector thing, but it's definitely a Virgo thing where I like things to be pretty perfect. And
Yep.
I also I think that mastery for me is that is the road to expansion, which is funny. But my manifesting generator husband has had multiple jobs
Uh-huh. Yep.
throughout his life,
Uh-huh.
and he does not care about mastery.
Sure.
Which again, in a relationship, when you've got one that's like mastery's the way,
Uh-huh.
and we have Tony Robbins telling us that, right? I have noticed, I don't know if you've noticed, but yes, a lot of coaches, a lot of more coaching has come into our experience.
Yeah.
Um, but but the old style of coaching where it's just go, 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 burn, burn, burn,
Uh-uh.
push through it, push through it, push through it, it's not working anymore. And I have noticed a change in even Tony Robbins and the messages that he shares because he's very much of a like a go go and you're amazing and you're great and you just go do the thing and start believing in yourself. And he's changed his tone a little bit. I think he's trying to pick up on it. So it's very cool because it allows for all of us to be who we are and to achieve success. And it allows for me to allow my husband to not have to seek mastery like
Uh,
I seek mastery. And we can be a pair, we can be um, a, a compatible partnership.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I like to paraphrase. There's two thoughts. So the manifesting generator literally tests, in my opinion, tests the biblical phrase that men are that they might have joy, and they're the ones breaking and defying all the rules while the rest of us are trying to keep it together, to follow the
Mm.
line. So in my opinion, the manifesting generator is like, yeah, I could do that. I hear you, but that's a waste of time. It doesn't bring me joy, so I don't do it. And so they're like, you can try to hold me back, but I'm not necessarily here for the step-by-step process. In fact, when they're authentic to their being, they will go from step 1 to step 13 to step 29. Oh, we skipped step 5, go back to skip, So there is
Yeah.
no sequence into which they like to create. It's just chaotic, but it's a beautiful chaotic. It's today this interests me and tomorrow it might not, but I follow my pulse. And so manifesting generators are literally just following their pulse. They're the ones that are doing it incorrectly to society. But the second thought I wanted to bring up while you said Tony Robbins is so funny. There are actual charts where you can look at celebrities and they are speaking their message inside of their gene keys, where they're authentically speaking what is in their blueprint. So
Oh,
here's what is really cool. I really believe we don't have to try to be our design. That's why I don't see it as like some modality outside of us, because he's doing what his chart shows, whether he's aware of this or not. And and I love what you just said, because I get passionate. It's why I'm teaching this. I'm going to like teach the whole world. Hierarchy is done. Hierarchy doesn't exist anymore. Synergy does. Synergy is when we work together, but hierarchy is when I think I need to dominate you and climb over you to get to some illusionary top, and there's no top. And so I love that you're aware that even the gurus are like, maybe the people don't want to strife anymore. Maybe they just want to work together because there is a knowing that there's more to receive in that way.
mm.
So yeah, that just makes me excited.
Oh, so excited. I love that. And I think that in my own life again, and this is where it all starts when we see the success at home
Yes.
in our hearts and ourselves, at home with our people.
Yes.
Um, when we can be an allowance of one another and understand it too. It's like there's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to let you just be you, but when I can understand why you're being you, it makes that allowance a lot more easy and filled with just like the love of I want to be allowed to be me.
Absolutely.
So I am allowing you to be you in that same way. And
Yes.
you said something so awesome. Definitely gonna quote that, but it is like no more hierarchy. We're now in synergy,
Yes.
because we can see what that offers us. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. As long as you understand, like, so generators and manifesting generators, they are the sort of builders. We'll call them builders. And if you look at a manifester, which is the next third type, a manifester has a very different aura. So they're not necessarily here to build, but they're here to inform. And
Mm.
informing is just a matter of sharing. And so, again, the internet will teach a manifester that they're incorrect if they're constantly bossing people around. But that's not what informing means. Informing just means I'm going to communicate what I'm up to, what is possible, where I am going, because in that it liberates all other humans to do the same. So the reason I bring that up is because if a manifester is informing and the generators are building what the manifester then informs, that's amazing synergy right there. And then we have a projector who doesn't necessarily want to be in the details of building it because they're not a builder, they're a guide.
Mhm.
So they want to guide
Mhm.
the project. And so they're going to guide all the others. And then we have a reflector who's like, oh, awesome, the project is done. Let's reflect on how we can do this better. And so they all are interwoven on how we as a society are designed to build, but we've been so corrupted in this like sort of gain and step outside of who we are to gain something. And I love what you said because human
Yes.
design is really, in one sentence, the ability to know that you gain everything when you just be you. So most people want the dollar because it represents freedom. And I would dare say, but what is freedom if you can't be all of you? Are you really free? You're not, because you've been like tying pieces and parts of you down and silencing your, oppression. And when you're not oppressed, I literally, you can't be depressed. You just can't, because you're shining and you're just doing you and being you. And with that, again, authenticity is possible. Um, yeah, that feels complete with what you were sharing.
Yes. Okay, I would love for you to clarify for me. I liked this analogy of kind of we're a crew working together to build a building, right?
Yeah, right.
Um, clarify for me the role of the manifester and the manifesting generators. The manifestors informing,
Yes.
but bring that more into that story of the building for me. Like, how would that
Yeah.
play out?
So a manifester is going to feel like their energy is inconsistent because they'll receive an idea, birth the idea, and initiate the starting process of it or inform the people this big vision. I want you to use the word vision. So if there's a vision, I want you to imagine it comes through a manifester and they start to do it, but they don't need to complete it. So a manifesting generator actually has two steps to success, not one. And this is where I separate the two groups from generator to manifesting generator, because the generator only has one step, the manifesting generator has two. And unless you can pull that apart in your brain, it gets really messy. So the manifesting generator needs to inform like a manifester, and then they will respond. So there is a sense of authority, there is a sense of communication that is very necessary. I'll bring it back to your relationship. When a manifesting generator doesn't inform, then it creates an unsafety in a partner or a relationship, because one minute they're doing this and the next they're doing this, and it's unpredictable. So the informing piece is using their voice, literally using their voice to say, hey, I just want you to know this is what I'm up to. And it does nothing for the other except for it's designed to create a sense of coherence and cohesion of, I now know what you're doing. Thank you for not leaving me in the dark. And then it gives the generators the opportunity to then use their one step process, which is to respond. But here's the crazy part: generators cannot respond to life or to things in general if there's no one informing or sharing or giving vision to. So generators actually love to respond to what is being shared. Another way to say this is when the manifesting generator and the manifester, when they do not use their voice, it leaves everybody in chaos and confusion, because they are like, we want to help you build, but you haven't expressed to us what the process looks like. So it's basically communication, if I don't
Totally.
figure out it.
So the manifester is like, here's what we're going to build.
Yes, yes.
And and then the generator, manifesting generator, is going to say, yes, that sounds good.
Uh-huh. Yes. It kind of goes like in a cycle, it kind of goes like in an order, but here's the one nuance. And this is why it's not so black and white, because I know what your mind's asking, but it's
Okay, yeah.
a little bit more complex. So if I could tell you the aura of a manifester, their aura is closed, and the rest of us are not with a closed aura. We're wide open.
Hmm.
So the manifester literally is 9% of the world. They're here to do whatever it is they want to do, and they literally don't ask permission. They're just off beating their own drum. The problem with that can be that their vision is so big it's going to require help. And most manifestors, you'll meet them and they actually will tell you the opposite, that they like to stay silent and they have felt like they haven't belonged their whole life
Mhm.
because they're this big and a part of the collective. Like 9% is almost nothing. And
Mhm.
as a projector, they feel the same way, but they're at least double the statistic. They're 20%.
Mhm.
And so you get into numbers and you start to see why people feel the way they feel inside. But a manifestor aura is closed. So it's not open to opinion. It's not open to, and it's not to say they're not human, but they're not necessarily here to wait for the universe to help them co-create. They just have this fire of let's go. So the way I would actually use the word informing is actually initiation. So I'm going to say something and I think it will land, but most generators are trying to be a manifester and they're trying to initiate. It's that hustle energy. They're not
Which you
designed.
would think that most of us are trying to be
Yeah,
manifestors.
most of us are
Yeah.
because we've been taught from companies like Nike, you
Mhm.
just do it. You need more willpower. You need this, you
Yeah.
need that.
Yeah.
And then you start looking
And
at your chart and that's not true.
not true. They're actually JP Morgan and oh gosh, I got to get this right if I'm giving this information. JP Morgan and Rockefeller, they wanted to create a working class.
Yeah.
And so they set forth to reform the education system
Yeah.
to create worker bees. So that we were literally taught, and we've discussed this lots, we're literally taught to be like the manifester and the generators, like
Yep.
think the idea, go do the work, go do the work. Or maybe we're more taught to be generators where we're told what to do
Uh-huh.
by the hierarchy
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
we just have to carry out the tasks.
Yes. And I think a lot of I love what you just said because it makes it more simple. Like regardless of what type you are responsible for your energy. And bottom line, we've all been taught that our energy is not ours. It's the first lie that we have to overcome is that our energy is not ours. Because if you don't feel like you want to build as a projector, then don't. But you get to overcome the psychology of what it means to not do anything and still have value. Because you're going to be programmed differently than a generator who's like, yeah, I did all of those things, but did I question if any of them made me happy? No. So we all are overcoming how we're using our energy and questioning if it's actually what makes us or brings us joy or not. But
Yeah.
that's the first step of understanding your human design, obviously, is am I a guide? Am I a builder? Am I an initiator? Am I a reflector? What is my contribution and how do I feel most aligned with myself? And if I am going to be a builder or a guide, what makes my heart so happy? Right? Because bottom line, if it doesn't make you happy, then don't do it, regardless of your type.
Yeah, I love how you said, oh my gosh, yes, I just accomplished all of that. But
But
did I do anything that I really wanted to do that really made me happy? Um,
get
I
the
just want to, it feels fun to like tie in my own experiences that might help people kind of reflect in their own lives of
yes,
these things going on.
yes,
Um, this is how human design worked in my life for quite a while and still does, but it's just like every little funny, nuanced, conflicting thing that would happen in the relationships of my family, just my tight, close family, is what I
yes.
focused on. Could be aided if I understood their human design a little bit better. Another issue I had with my husband that I was just like, oh my gosh, this is why. So you brought this to my knowledge was I as my need to constantly master things,
Yes.
thinking everybody should be doing that, right? But one of the things with my husband is when we would have difficult times in life, I would think he's doing nothing about it
Yes.
because he's not telling me anything.
Mm,
And so for a week or two or some months, I'd be like, he's doing nothing about it. He's doing nothing about it because
yeah.
I don't see him doing anything about it. He's not telling me.
Right.
So then I would ask him to inform me. And I
Yes.
didn't realize that I was doing that, but I'd be like, it would be so helpful if you would just say, this is what I'm doing.
Yes. Inform.
Inform. And you're so right. It's so hard for him to inform.
Yep.
He just, they're, they're quiet. I actually have a manifesting daughter.
Yes.
We're getting into the teenage years. Uh, so it is getting more and more challenging to tell her what to do.
Yes.
you know? And so I am deciding to go and just trust this process of her with the closed aura being a manifester.
Yes.
She knows what she wants to do, and she doesn't need the guidance and direction that others of my children need.
Yes.
And I would say created more space and peace in my life. Oh my gosh, if you're a mother out there, if you're a parent out there, let this be
Yes.
a selling point to discovering human design is that I am able to take so much responsibility off of my shoulders
Yes.
as I allow the people around me to just be who they are, trust that process.
Mm.
One of my sons is fully defined
Wow.
except for his root. And the only guidance he really needs from me is things relating to that root chakra, that root
Yes.
center. And otherwise, I'm like, I feel like so at ease because this kid, he knows exactly who he is and what he's going to do with himself. So he doesn't need me to micromanage him. So,
I love what you just said with even the thought of your daughter. She is a manifester and she's designed to feel peace. And so the more that you say you feel peace, it's really beautiful because that means that she is and you are in a harmonious dance with just yeah the relationship balance. So thanks for bringing kids into this because I really think harmony has to start in our homes before it's in our business, before it's in our communities even. And I think as women, like you said, we're so taught to micromanage or to overnourish or to correct and fix, but really our goal isn't to correct and fix, it's just really to nourish, and we can nourish ourselves and then others and really just start to bring those gifts to come out. And I love that you're doing that with your kids already. You're like, you have gifts. I'll just give you the environment so they can blossom. And I love that
yeah,
because that's what
yeah.
parenting is.
Well, yeah, it came about because I recognized that as parents, we parent our children to be ourselves.
Yeah, right.
I don't think there's no way around that unless you're very aware.
Yeah,
And so most of us have been parented to be our parents and to
yes,
be in their energy and behave as they behave. And so then we turn to the generation below and we do that unconsciously, even if we're like, I'm going to do things differently. We're just really
yes,
unconsciously encouraging our
mhm,
children in the way that we feel best. And
yes,
I feel best in my energy.
yes,
So I am encouraging them to be me, to be my energy, to move through the world in the way that I move through the world because it feels good to me. It's going to feel good to you, you know?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. You'll say a word and then it triggers my thought process. But one of my favorite aspects of human design is probably of all of the systems, probably the ability to look at someone's chart and know what's in their subconscious, because a lot of self help tries to approach change the feeling or manifest your best life, but even that process is so personal. And even that process has the ability to like dig from the subconscious mind and bring forward a pattern that mom and dad gave you that you don't necessarily love, but you can see it as a gift instead of like this shadow or this curse or whatever the perception is. But the ability to bring it forward just means now you have choice and awareness, like you said. And I think that everyone's journey is respected as it is where it is right now. And we know that there's obviously so much more. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You're welcome. Okay, so we've talked about the five types: the manifester, manifesting generator, the generators, the projectors, the reflectors. You didn't say much on reflectors, only that they will reflect back
Yeah.
what's going on.
So they have no defined centers. Like your sun has color throughout his whole chart. The reflector has none. And
Mhm.
their aura is going to be sampling. So the way I see it is like it's got a lot of cyclical nature, like it's got cycles within a cycle. So in other words, they are not defined anywhere in their chart. That doesn't mean they don't know who they are, but it means that they are going to operate almost completely different than society. They're going to want to operate with moon cycles instead of the sun. So most of us are like, we get up to accomplish XYZ, to have a good day, and then we go to rest. Where a reflector might want to be in their own aura or their own energy, like you so beautifully said, but maybe at night, because that's when the noise of the world is calming down, or that's when they're able to hear their own process. Because what they're looking for is they're looking for their own energy and they want to cycle out everything that they've experienced that their aura has then picked up. And so what's beautiful is their aura is not penetrating in like yours is, and they're not wide open like mine. But what they're doing is they're open and then they're closed, and then they're open and then they're closed, and they're open and they're closed because they're going through the buffet of life. They're like, I'm going to try this and then I'm going to try that. But now I'm good. I'm full. I need to go process in my
Mm.
own environment and sample and reflect. So, what I will say is that they're 1% of the population. And when you meet a reflector, you either, in my opinion, this is a fact, you either hate them or you love them. But what I tell that person is you are looking in a mirror, literally. So, what you don't like is being reflected back to you, quite literally. I love them, and most people do, but reflectors have a very different way in which they want to operate. So, they need permission to go with the cycles of the moon. They need a lot more time, and they need to they need to be very what's the word I want to use? They need to be very picky about the environment in which they're in because they're constantly sampling life. And I think that's true for all of us. Like you're
Mm.
not going to want to penetrate and zone in on something that's toxic or isn't yummy. So you're going to want to be careful and mindful of your environment. And so that's where the epigenetics come in. What our influence is constantly influencing us to do or experience. So reflectors have a very beautiful process where they are designed to make decisions roughly every 28 days. That's what the internet says. I feel like that's a limitation. I feel like they just need to get clear on the experience that they just tasted, and then they need time to like integrate it, decide what they do and don't like, and then release it. And if
And
that's
that could take a day or that could take
correct,
several weeks,
yeah,
whatever.
we're not hung up on time as much as we just know they're open. So they need time
Yeah.
to go clean out all their chakras and then be like, cool, this is my decision. So yeah, I don't buy into the limitation of time at all.
I don't perceive that you buy too much limitation at all. Yeah.
You're so cute. Trying,
Yeah,
working on it.
I love that. I think that people will like that can help us to see where we are limiting ourselves
Yeah,
and any language that we are using that's limiting. And as human design is forwarded into the world, um, recognizing how we're just the echo chamber. We're just repeating what's been taught without questioning some of the things in there. Like
yeah,
you've questioned the way that the projector is taught how to be. It seems very limiting, and the reflector seems very limiting. So
yes.
I think all of us, when we're given this set of like rules or whatever, if it feels limiting at all and someone's like, well, no, you actually don't have to have that limitation on you, all of us are like, oh, thank you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
absolutely. Yes.
Okay, I would love to talk about um so we did the 5 types. There are I wanted to go in on the centers that we have briefly mentioned and talked about. This is a funny part of human design,
Yeah.
funny because we get so human in this area. Well, okay, and so here's what I mean about get so human is we are constantly seeking for value and worth,
Yes.
and we decide what has more value and what has more worth.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes the how we arrived at that decision is just like makes no sense unless you go back into do your childhood trauma, right? I'm like, oh, that makes sense why you arrived at that decision. But
Yeah.
just like all the types, people will put in their information and they're like, oh, I'm this type, this makes sense. Or they're like, oh, I wish I was. For me, it was hard to understand I was a projector. I didn't want to wait for an invitation. I just wanted to be the manifester, get the things going. But the second part that was so funny to me was these centers. So
Yes.
you can explain the centers and the experiences that I've had with people. They place a value on how many you have that are defined, how
Mhm.
many that you have that are undefined and
Yeah.
open. And so let's make sure we speak to that
Yes.
after you describe what these centers are.
Yes, I love that. So I have a brain that teaches this and sees this different. So just want full disclosure, you might not read this on the internet, and that's okay. So the centers inside of the human design is the chakras. It's the Hindu chakra system. It's not the Western chakra system. Don't get hung up on how many there are, because I want people to be able to digest this information. Simply, I will say that I want to address what you said first so I don't lose the thought. It's not more right or better if you have more definition in the chakras, and it's not worse if there's more open. We need to let go of the idea that there is a better way, like if it's colored it's better than if it's open. That's incorrect. So the internet will teach you that if you have colored centers in these chakras it's better because that means you know who you are, etc. So let me tell you the truth of what the centers are. And again, I just ask spirit because that feels more revolutionary than to take a textbook and take that for word. So if a center is open, you are designed to receive life. It's receptive, it's yin energy. So I bring in the yin and the yang energy because this makes the most sense. You have a natural give and receive cycle within your body. Natural give and receive. Where there is an open center, you are designed to receive all of the goodness of life. The problem is that the ego or the part of your brain that thinks it's wrong to be open there is constantly trying to do output instead of input. It wants to resolve the place it feels inconsistent. So the next thing I'll say, and this is a lot, but I'm trying to keep it as basic as your mind will be like, oh, aha. The next aha then is where you are white in a chakra center. That is where you have wisdom, not energy.
Mhm.
So there's wisdom there. And without your wisdom, then your energy would be half of its vitality because you have so much wisdom to offer. So they go together. So you look at your chart and you go, where am I open? That's where I have the most wisdom. That's also the place that my brain has been trying to put up resistance and fight it because I'm actually designed to let go, receive, and relax. And the part of me that's defined and has color is the masculine. And that's the part of me that has energy. Therefore, it is going to be able to imprint and to give because it's constant. So if we give from our centers that are colored in, there is constant energy to give. And then I'll go one layer deeper. Who you be, who you are naturally, is a giving, imprinting energy. Period. It's not even what you
Oh,
do. Does that make sense?
yes, it does.
So I have mostly all defined except for three areas in my chart, which is the G center, the one below the throat, and then I have all three of them open. So my emotional solar plexus is open. I used to think that was a curse. I'm like, I don't want to feel everything. I feel everything. I feel when a dog is hurt. I feel when my partner is upset. I feel like when I know when someone is agitated, I feel deeply. And then I realized, where is that a blessing? And it's in my speaking because I know what someone is feeling and I'll speak to it before they even acknowledge it. And so that's just one layer of where your open centers receive information from another. And you don't have to be energetically swamped by it. You just need to know the universe has given you a natural process inside of your body in which you give and you receive just by being in your body. Is
Mm.
that complex or does that make sense?
What it is for me, I don't know how it will be for the beginner, but what it is for me is again, you've broken through limitations and
Mm-hmm.
you've widened the experience, the human experience.
Yeah.
You've made it more um like delicious.
Ah, yeah, it's so boring when you read it in books, right? It just is.
Yes, yes, and limiting, like you said, and you're putting a lot of. I think the right word you already used is you are putting a lot of spirit into this,
Yes.
which I am just enjoying so very much, and um, maybe it just speaks to my own experience. Maybe there's others out there who've had this as well. You need to first embark in discovering your human design. People do it for all kinds of reasons.
Right.
I did it to better understand myself as I was in the middle of a complete uh, ego death and
Yes.
shedding and trying to find where the heck the phoenix was so it could rise from the ashes.
Yes.
And so I didn't, there was a lot about my chart that did feel limiting, but the
Oh,
way that
yes.
you express being open as yin, I love that. It totally resonates with me. Look, I'm getting emotional right now.
Yay, I love that. I always tell people if you're getting emotional, I don't mean to cut you off. It's actually the part of your body that knows truth.
Oh, I know this because I've done enough processing of my pain and shame that when I speak and I'm starting to become emotional, I'm like, here it is. I'm hitting it on the nail right now. So I'm going to pay attention to what I'm saying because I'm
Yes.
hitting it.
Yes.
And then as I heal that and I can speak to it without emotion, that means I have healed through it. And so I super appreciate that. For me, that is definitely what a tell is like, oh, my throat, it's all coming. I'm going to cry about it. And being a member of a religion where people would speak and cry a lot, I would
Yes.
just be like embarrassed about it. But then I couldn't. I couldn't get up and speak without crying.
Yeah.
Um, so crying was weakness. Speaking with emotion is weakness. It's definitely changed as I've done my own work. So I don't want to like tangent too far uh, off of what you said. Was to me, you just the canvas of human design was this big and it was beautifully painted, but you just like took off the curtains or something and like, oh, there's so much here
Yeah. Yeah.
that, like you said too, can be played with and felt into differently than a textbook version. So, and
Yes.
I feel that the man who received this information
Right.
received it in that way too, not a such a strict sense of being.
Yeah, there is information that, and I'll just be blunt, because I used to feel like an imposter when teaching this work. I'm like, it didn't come through me, and I shouldn't be teaching it. It's not my knowledge. And then that's when Spirit was like, hello, like there's more ways to see truth universally, and there's more ways to fit someone's like awareness. But I just boldly, I'll respond. I don't agree with half of the way that it's taught even from him, and he received it. I think that the intention was beautiful, but there's times where you'll hear people say, oh, well, that's just the human experience. We just have no choice. Or, oh, that's just
Mm,
because I'm a this, so I can't be a that. And I'm like, that's just
mm,
not the reality. I'm not going to subscribe to that belief system. If I'm unplugging from my religious system or all these other beliefs, why would I plug into a just as restricting? Like, I'm not going to buy into that belief. So yeah, thank you. I think that it's when you first read about it, you got to start somewhere, right? So definitely go and pull your chart if you're a beginner and start somewhere. But the best thing I ever did for myself was ask questions in a journaling way. Like, okay, I'm a generator. How does Brianna generate in today's world? And then I
mm,
got cool answers. Or how do you as a projector want to guide the people? What are you passionate about? So there's dig deeper questions that help remove the label, like you're
mhm.
saying.
So your belief is that the system wasn't given to limit us further as we dive into it and seek to understand it. If we
Right.
come out feeling further limited than when we began,
That it's
or maybe I would say even for me, I didn't feel further limited, but maybe differently limited.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, because at the time when I was learning or being taught this information, I was going through my second divorce. So I had not just done it once, I've done it twice.
Mhm,
And going through all of those different scenarios, I just wanted love and I couldn't understand why that was so hard. Like, why is it
mhm,
so hard? Like, I'm loyal, I'm committed, I'm married to this man, that didn't work out, all the things. And so I realized that if I'm going to learn this information, it was kind of like my own boundary. And then I started teaching it to others and I could see they needed the boundary as well. But if you're learning this to see where you're broken, you're crossing the boundary. And if you're learning this to see how much more expansive that you are and how amazing you are, and you're using it for your light and why you're a badass, then you'll thrive. But if you're looking at this through the negative lens of, I'm broken, no one loves me, and I'm looking through the lens of that validation, it's like you're going to find what you're looking for. And so the boundary is you only use it to build yourself up, to spiral up so that you don't spiral down, because the world is going to tell you where you suck. Like, you've got 10 people that can tell you right now where you're failing. So we use this to build ourselves up, not down. And it's just that building of the muscle of self belief.
ugh, yes. Oh, that is like my number one message right there. Building
Yes.
that level of self-belief.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. All that you just said was so, so good. Okay, so we've talked about the 5 types. We've talked about the centers.
Mhm.
Um, and I think we only talked about open being yin,
Yes.
receiving.
Yes.
And that's where you're wise and you don't have as much energy to output there.
You're designed to receive. So then
Design.
the opposite is like when you have color there, it's imprinting the world around you.
Mhm.
So, like for example, what center do you have open in your body graph? Like, what's the center you have open?
Open or undefined?
Undefined.
So let me just make sure I got it correct. Undefined means I have no gates and it's white, right?
Yep. So I use the words interchangeably. So thank you for someone that needs to know. So when I say open or undefined, to me it's interchangeable,
Okay.
regardless if there's gates or not. So
Okay.
open just meaning that the center itself does not have an imprint of color.
Yeah. Well, I have quite a few, but one of them is my crown.
Cool. Okay. So in our beautiful exchange right now, I'm defined in my head. I have color in my head
Mhm.
where you do not. And
Mhm.
so you are literally designed, this is so beautiful. You're designed to soak in all of the information that's coming and to play with it and to receive. Where my
Mhm.
head is not necessarily in a receptive space all of the time. I have to be mindful. My mind is like, oh, I have so much knowledge.
Mhm.
I'm wanting to give. The more I give, I do not burn out. And so
Mhm.
it's just that exchange of energy. So another way we could say it is with your open crown, you are designed to receive and be in a very receptive state. You are here to daydream, so let yourself do that more. My brain is very turned on and analytical most of the time. So it doesn't necessarily want to drift. It wants to be crunching and solving numbers and all
Mhm.
those things.
Mhm.
So the way you could look at it simply is if it's colored or defined, it is imprinting the open center. So yours is like, oh, we're going to experience this with this person. And the defined center is like, here, I want to share my knowledge with you because that's the chakra we're talking about. But then after we leave and we part, it's not that you necessarily need to focus on answers that you don't have solutions to, but it is just an energy exchange. So masculine is when you want to give energetic output.
Mhm.
But you would get drained if I made you reverse, and this is complex, so stick with me for just a second. But if I was to ask you to solve answers to questions all day long, to questions that weren't even yours, you would burn out.
Oh
And
yeah.
you would burn out. In fact, you would be like, okay, I'm exhausted. Go take
Can
a
I say again, can I say
yes.
that I was telling my husband that I do not want to answer questions of my children anymore.
Well,
Like,
that's fascinating. Yes.
that's not what I want to do. And it's so that's so interesting that you're saying that because it's like, I don't know, or that sounds cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So that I love what you just said because that's actually your authentic design to not know and to be open-minded. Because someone
Mhm.
who's open-minded doesn't always know. Where
Yeah,
I actually get energy from this. Like it will never drain me to answer questions and to talk all day long.
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
good to know that because I have energy for output where you are literally designed to soak in all of the knowledge of the universe while staying
Mhm,
open all of the time.
mhm,
It's when
mhm.
you force yourself to need to know the answer that you'll burn out because you're not being receptive. Now you're being the opposite of receptive. You're trying to
Yeah.
get the energy to consistently know when you don't have energy to find color to consistently know. You have wisdom to find out.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it does make sense. And for others out there to just start to take a look. For me, I think that a lot of our again, we're bringing in our conditioning, right?
Yes, correct.
How we're raised and what society says, any cultural backgrounds that we have with like even like I'm Hawaiian, so there's cultural background stuff
Yes.
that runs there and any religious thing. In my family, it was very valued to be smart and to know the answer and to be perceived as knowing the answer. And
Yes.
it just you could feel like the stupid one when when you maybe you don't need to know. Like I don't need to know the same way as other members of my family. So hopefully that offers people permission
Oh my
to
God.
not be the same way. It was like if it feels off like you said, then it is for you. And then the other thing that was really cool for me was that I understood that this space for me, this podcasting space for me, could really be fun
Yes.
because I want all people to be seen and heard.
Yes.
and their opinions and their ways of moving about the world. I think there's so many, and I think they're all, they're just valuable. And
Yes.
so being able to host a space like that, I can, because I really do receive all of the things like, oh, this is interesting, cool, this is interesting, this is interesting. And nothing has to be strict in my brain as like right or wrong.
Yes. I love what you just said so much. It's like your brain is doing the asking, my brain is doing the telling.
Yeah.
We
And I love to just ask everybody
And that's why
all of
your
their
podcast is
things.
going to be so and is so phenomenally successful because you're in alignment. Like if you did a podcast the opposite way of like, I'm going to tell you guys what I know, it wouldn't be received with your genius because your genius is like it flowers and blossoms as it continues to experience the beholder, like you're witnessing it.
Mhm.
And so with open centers, it is our most wise place and it is our most beautiful feminine art of way of being. But first, you have to remove the conditioning, like you said.
Yes.
And the conditioning part is it can be complex, but it's really not. So like the open head is literally I don't know. And the open ajna is I don't need to be certain.
And where's the ajna?
The one right below the head. So I'm just going to go
Mhm. There die. Yeah.
down, yeah, with one liners because it's so simple, but we forget
Yeah.
it. So if your ajna is open, I don't need to be certain. And
Yeah.
if the throat's open, I don't need to talk to be seen. And if you
Mhm.
have an open identity center, I don't need direction to know my identity. And then bottom down the sacral, I don't need to be productive in order to have worth. And the root, I don't need to fix my beliefs with what everyone else believes because the belief system is open, literally. It gets to believe
Mhm.
what it wants to believe.
Mhm.
So then you've got your spleen center, which is I don't have to be sick and feel everyone's fear. And then the open emotional center is I don't have to identify with the emotions around me. So
Mhm.
there's so much like, and then there's the ego center, which is the small triangle. I know it's hard when you're listening to a podcast, but I don't need to prove. I don't need to prove. And that is the number one condition center of all of them is the ego center. It's the small
Mhm.
triangle and it's the belief that we need to prove.
Yeah.
If we prove our worth, we're okay. So the defined center, just to come full circle, is really a beautiful blessing because it's the part of us, in my opinion, that we take for granted the most. So the mind likes to focus on the open centers and tell a story why that is wrong about us. But it's our defined centers that we take for granted the most because we assume everybody has the energy to operate as such. That's also our authentic self. So that's the energy that also doesn't get expressed to the highest capacity because it's not testing the buffet of life. It's one filter. So
Ah.
one filter means it's constant and it's defined because that energy is constant. It's how you
Mhm.
perceive the world and there's only one way. But when something is open, it gets a variety of whoever's around and its environment. So it has many varieties in which it shows up. But after it shows up, it also leaves. That's why it's not consistent. That's why it's wisdom. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of nuances, but your higher self is where the colors are. And I
Mhm.
actually don't like the limitation of believing our higher self isn't the open centers, but that's where we usually suck at receiving compliments or gifts or money or whatever because we've been taught not to receive in that unique way.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Yeah. So would you say with a defined center, which would be colored in center, it would be the opposite language that you just used to walk us through all the open centers?
I would, yeah, absolutely, I would. I had to think
So
about
for
that.
like
Yeah.
ego, it would be I prove that I am.
Actually, what's interesting, and I attract a lot of defined ego centers, which is fun. I actually believe the opposite. So I actually believe that it's not that this is just observation. It's you actually are so connected to your worth that you don't know how other people don't hold themselves as high as you do. So it's actually the undefined egos that think they need to prove because there's people that have the defined egos that naturally
Gotcha.
hold themselves up. And we're like, how do you just do that? Because I don't have energy to prove like you're doing. And I want to use a different word than prove. That
Yeah.
makes sense for the open center, but for the closed center, it's almost like you're confused that everybody doesn't have the willpower and the discipline that you do because it's
Oh,
willpower, it's the willpower center. You have energy for willpower. Your number one frustration and conditioning is that you believe everyone should follow through like you do.
it's so funny. Remember, I talked about my need for mastery and that
Yep,
how come my husband is not?
that's fine. That's exact. I don't even know what your chart looks like. That's exact. You have unlimited willpower because it's energy.
Mhm.
His is open. He
Mhm.
is not connected to any sort of like energy center that says you wake up every day and you have so much willpower. He doesn't relate to it at all.
This is so interesting because a lot of people in partnership, um, and oh, I'm so curious to see how marriage counseling could be changing,
Uh-huh.
um,
Uh-huh.
and partnership counseling could be changing. We embark upon these challenges together. You know, a lot of couples will do this. We're like, we're gonna do this challenge together. And whether I don't know if you've heard of like 75 hard or
Yeah,
anything
totally.
like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're gonna do it together. But as we're talking, one or the other will be more successful because it's natural for
Yep.
them to push through or just have willpower. I just have the willpower to do this thing.
Yes.
Um, where the other won't so much, and maybe that other will feel
Less
not as good at, or this challenge is so much harder for me. And this is an interesting subject anyway to talk about 75 hard. And is it good for us to embark upon something like that when it's like, here's the list of tasks, and possibly most of these don't align to your natural energy?
Uh-huh, correct. Absolutely. In fact, you just said something that if it doesn't get mentioned, I've done a misjustice with this podcast, but authority is probably the number one concept after learning your type. And I say that because an
Mm,
authority like your husband might be, and I don't know if he is an emotional authority, but the reason I say that is emotional authorities are people that need time and space to make a decision, where a sacral authority is like, dude, I know and I know right now. And so what people do is they make decisions from their mind. And so what you're picking up on is I no longer use my mind because that's a limited way to make a decision. I now use my authority, which is so expansive because the body is connected to unlimited possibility. So if someone doesn't operate in their authority, then they're actually limiting themselves. And not only that, but what's fascinating is 75 hard, like whether the ego center was defined or not, what you'll notice is that most couples make decisions based on what they think they're doing for the other, but it's actually harming them, because
mm,
then they're going to use your authority to make decisions. And the minute you're not around, they're not sovereign, they're not powerful, they're not all these things because they're used to borrowing your knowledge and your know-how. So it actually breaks up the codependence. But what it does is it creates a relationship where you are you, I am me, and then we can create a third reality, but not because I need you to make me whole. And so our biggest conditioner usually ends up being our spouse, only because we don't know what we don't know. And it's not bad. We love the heck out of them. But if we understood that your willpower was the strength and we understood his creativity dynamics as a manifesting generator was his strength, you would have a lot more leverage and efficiency than trying to get on the same quote, quote page. I don't believe in the same page. I believe in different pages because we're writing a novel together. And it's
mm,
faster if you're working on this chapter and I'm working on this chapter, but the,
mm.
the book is still universal. Does that make sense?
Oh, it again, here you are. Yes, you're just like opening up. You're just opening it up. It makes complete sense, and it's kind of like, why would you and I work on this book together and do the same thing and sit and type the same thing when you have the gift to edit and I have the gift to get the content out?
Yes.
Why in the heck would we use our energy and our time this way?
Yes, but we're not taught that
So
way, so it's cool.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so freeing. It's so, so freeing. Okay, so since you mentioned it, go ahead and speak to the authority.
Yeah, absolutely. So the authority is the second part down. I like the Blue Human Design app. You'll need to download the app. You can also go to mybodygraph.com and enter your birth information. When you pull it, though, it will show your type. That's the first word that's popping up in the top left corner. The thing under that is what's called an authority. So,
And the types were the projectors, the manifestors, all of that. Those were
yep,
the types.
yep, the type is the authority. I'm sorry, the type is the generator, manifesting generator, manifester, projector, and reflector. So then under that, we have what's called the authority. And there's more than 8 authorities. The internet says 7. I think there's 8. But what I'll say about authority, the very first thing to do if you're listening to this podcast is never go to the internet, but you need to rewire in your brain what authority means. Because as long as your authority is your bishop or your dad or your mom or your spouse, it doesn't matter what your authority says. You are still perceiving it as like you're disempowered. Someone else has the power outside of you. That's actually the system I started to integrate after leaving religion. Okay, so if I am my own authority, and it doesn't matter if I'm male or female, like what do I need to do right now today to believe in myself and to build self-trust? So human design is actually building self-trust. You just don't know it. And you have to look at authority. If authority is a yucky word, you're not going to like it. Like if authority is yucky and negative. So first get behind the authority in human design. I'll give you the definition. Authority is the inner compass or the body's truth, inner compass to the correct decision. And I love
Mhm.
that because we've been trained to believe that we have to do trial and error. And then through that process, we learn, but your body actually will only give you the truth. Only. There's no like margin for, oh, you chose wrong. Now I'm going to punish you. So the authority in human design is the inner compass and the body's correct decision making process. So I want you to
Mhm.
journal like, okay, if that's the correct decision for me, how can I learn to make only correct decisions? And how can I play with that concept? Because life
Mhm.
wants to give you all the correct decisions. You've just been
Mhm.
taught to go look for it. So we've got 8 authorities, and majority of the population, there's about 3, in my opinion, that they fall under. So first is the emotional. What I could tell you in one line is that emotional authorities need time and space to decide. If they are asked to make a decision right now, the answer is always no.
Okay. So you can think about that if you've got anyone in your life that you're like,
Uh huh.
"I
Yep.
need you to answer me."
Yep. You are not to make decisions in the high of the emotion or the low of the emotion. You need to make decisions when the thought is neutral.
Mhm.
Because if it's high today and you wake up tomorrow and you're feeling a different way, you're going to want to cancel. Therefore, you'll think you're flaky. Therefore, it's a whole thing. So,
Yes.
emotional authorities need time and space, and you make a decision when it's neutral. Sacral authority is a sound. So, I'm a sacral authority. It's an uh-huh or an uh-uh. So, if you ask me a question, it's like uh-huh, and I go with it. So, it's very childlike. Childlike energy will answer. Um, the sacral needs to be given a yes or no question only,
Mhm.
not open ended. So if you ask
Mhm.
me an open ended question, I will go to my head. If you ask me yes or no, I can answer that with a sound. So sacral is in your gut and it's uh huh or
Mhm. Mhm.
does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does.
Yeah. So then the last, not last, but one of the last majority of people will fall under is splenic. And
Mhm.
splenic authorities are like you just know, like you know, and that decision is a whisper and it's in the now. So here's what's cool is that emotional authorities do not make decisions in the now.
Mhm.
Sacral and splenic do.
Yeah,
That's a big nuance for relationships because
yeah.
while one is like, I need time and space, the other is like, no, I only know how to act right now. And
Mhm.
so the splenic is basically intuition, what everyone talks about. It's the part of you that is like your spine. You can't see it, but you know it's there. It supports you. It's the
Mhm.
part that says turn left, and your brain's like, but why? We need to go to the grocery store. Clearly, that's not right. So
Mhm.
then you have to start paying attention to that voice.
Mhm.
Then we have an ego authority. And bottom line, you're here to follow what you desire and what you're going to get out of it. Like what's in it for you. The world will teach an ego authority, hello, don't do that. That's selfish, right? You can see where that conditioning is. Then you've got environmental, which literally means what it sounds like. You need to have an environment in which the answer can come to you. So I like to also call it solitude. It's just that the noise is too loud. You just need to turn it down, create an environment in which the answer can be received and fall into your lap. You've got mental, which is very interesting. The mental authority in my awareness is like someone has to call a friend and they have to get everything out in their brain and they have to get it out. Like the mental chatter has to come out. Here's what's cool though, the mental authority is not asking for advice. They're only
Mhm.
doing that to hear their own voice. And so they're
Mhm.
only doing it to be a soundboard. So you need a friend in your life if you're a mental authority and they'll just listen to you and you're like, I think I'm quitting this job, but I don't really know because did it and they'll realize while they're talking, if they'll listen to
Mhm.
their own audio, their truth has already been disclosed. So the friend is just to reflect back to what they already know. Um, what other ones? We've got the G center, which is really just defined on direction. Like you know that the direction you make has to be basically fixated on does this allow me to continue to self express? Or does this hinder my self expression? And is this direction going to basically liberate more of my essence? Or is this going to make me shy down and be less of who I am? So the G center is literally the path and the direction of I know my direction and I won't let anyone get in the way of it. So there are people that are designed to have a one track direction where a lot of us
Mhm.
aren't. A lot of us are like, we don't know. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, those are the different authorities, but bottom line, it's the way that your body nudges you to make a correct decision, regardless of what your mind is saying, pros or cons. So that's how I
Yes.
answer that.
Thank you so much. Again, just the way that you teach this is I'm understanding it well, but also you're again expanding my perspective. I love that you pointed us to the awareness that our body is connected to unlimited possibility.
Yes.
I feel that human design really points you back to your body, and just like you said, bring teaches us how to trust ourselves.
Yes.
And when uh, we are undertaking um a mass deconditioning, and the structures that and systems that have upheld the generations before us are no longer wanted.
Yes. Yes.
So one of the things that falls under that deconstruction is that, like you said, our authorities outside of ourselves.
Ex-
And many of us who have gone through faith transitions or questionings have discovered that we were conditioned to seek for guidance and answers and knowing um, w- within what's going on currently and even beyond into the cosmos
Yes.
from somebody else
Yes.
and not ourselves. So I really appreciate your messaging and how you're connecting it into human design, because I also feel that human design does bring
Yes.
us back to ourselves.
Yes.
I appreciate your messaging of it being not good or bad. It doesn't, what are your quiz results? They're all wonderful. They're all beautiful because they're everyone's quiz result. The way I'm saying that, quiz result.
It's true though. It's
It's
true.
not a quiz.
Results.
It's not a quiz. You can't get the answer wrong. It is as it is, just like you are loved and worthy just because you are. It is the same um
Yes.
vein of thinking.
Yes.
Um Self-trust. Oh, you said self-trust, and I also want to add to that trust of others too, because it has helped
Yes.
me to give. It wasn't mine to take in the first place, but to give people their way of
Yes.
moving through the world,
Yeah.
and how much harmony and synergy can come from that. Two questions for you.
Okay.
So I'll ask the first, and when we complete that, I'll ask the second. We kind of talked about some common misconceptions about human design. One of them was our energy centers being opened or defined. You talked about projectors and reflectors, and kind of made them feel better about themselves. No, not about themselves, but about the way that they're moving through
Operating.
the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other common misconceptions about human design that you love to speak to?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind, and it's worth saying on repeat, is once you start realizing what your gene keys are and what the astrology story is, or whatever, you don't have to try to be it. It's not a modality outside of yourself. So while you're looking at the chart, yes, it's like a visual, and yes, there's words that place the story together. But just know the words are not all there unless you're very familiar with all of its systems. And number two, you don't have to try so hard to be it. In fact, a lot of this process, like you said, is unlearning, undoing. And the reason you want to unlearn and undo is because there's so much more expansion past the labels that you've put on yourself or that others have. And then the second thing that I want to say again is that there is no type that is better than. There is no type, or like you didn't lose out on something if you don't have a profile or a certain whatever. I think our brains are used to comparison. But I invite the audience to use, instead of comparison, use the word combined. Like, how is
Mm,
my chart in the full essence, open or closed, with this and that? Like, what is the comparison? Not comparison, what is the combination of what makes me unique? Because then you're not compartmentalizing different things.
mhm,
So the last thing I'll say is that, again, if it feels limiting, it is. And if the internet is telling you you can't because of XYZ, I just invite you to challenge that, because it is so beautiful if you'll get past the idea that it's like you said, a personality test or something to be studied or learned. So Gene Keys is a really big part of that system. And that's always where I tell people go to genekeys.com. It's going to pull up 4 different paragraphs for you. What it's doing is it's talking to your actual DNA. And when you have something that causes emotion like you experienced, it's your body's truth. And so I just invite people to also be patient with themselves. Like I'm on year 3 of my embodiment process, but the
Mhm.
first year was a lot of like, I'll read it and then I'll put it down. And then I'll read it and then I'll put it down because there was only so much that I could let go at a time. And I
Mhm.
want to also preface that if you're experiencing the let go process, it doesn't have to be dark. I wish someone would have told me the let go process is the freedom process, not the grieving process, and that the call is greater than the loss. The call to be
Mhm.
your best self is greater than the loss you're currently experiencing, which is the grief that you were bad or that you were shame or that you were whatever. So just be patient with the learning process, is what I would say.
Mhm. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, Last question. What, in your perspective, what is the impact human design has on our future?
Ooh. Um, I used the word synergy already, but it really does feel like my soul's truth. To imagine a world and to see a world where we don't necessarily trample on one another or compete with one another, but we respect and honor another. I feel like every single soul knows at some level that they came here for a reason. And most people get so hung up on looking for the reason rather than just being the reason. And I
Mhm.
imagine the future, the vision I hold is like there is so much synergy, there's harmony, but it's even beyond that. It's a world in which there is growth and reciprocity beyond needing to take from another or needing to be on the grid. Like the image I have is a chess, like a chessboard.
Mhm.
And as long as you're trying to be another piece, then who's being the queen? And if you're being this person, then who's being the king? And it's just this chessboard where I imagine we all get in our placement of the grid, and in that we all win. Like winning doesn't have to take from another. So the future I imagine is that empowerment literally becomes less about philosophy and we just stand in it.
Yeah. So this game we play is collaborative moving forward. This is a
Yes.
game where everyone,
Mhm.
if the goal is for everyone to win. There are games out there where it's like
Yes.
we win.
Uh-huh. You
We
lose.
win when we accomplish this thing.
Yes.
Everyone is going to win.
Yeah, like I love the book by Florence Shovel. I can never say her last name. Shovel. Shovel. Anyway, she
Okay.
wrote a book and it's called The Game of Life and How to Play It, and
Mm,
it's really really beautiful. But what you just said is so articulate. It's knowing that like I'm not here to believe or buy into the struggle of life anymore. I believe that I'm here to thrive in life. But you can't believe that until you've overcome your own lower consciousness states. But I believe that when we're all in that higher plane, it's really simple to see that literally, if joy isn't the point, there is no other point to get to. Like, there is no other exaltation we seek except for to know that we're alive and it's okay to take the risk. Like, take the
mm,
risk. You're already
yeah,
alive, but most of
yeah.
us expect to die, not to live. And so
Mm,
I want that reframe to happen for everyone.
yeah. Thank you so much. So, so much. You have delighted me. And so I'm very grateful to you. Very, very grateful to your time. I would like to say that what I'm most grateful for you too is, and here comes the emotion, everybody, is that you have said yes and that you have answered that call that came from within you because we need it.
Yes.
And the way that you teach it is unique and special and important. And there are people, many, many that are going to resonate, like you said, I'm going to teach the world in this, in your perspective, how you see it. And to me, it's a lot more expansive and allowing, and the limitations are pulled off, and spirit exists in it. The
Yes.
spirit of it rather than the letter of it,
Yes. The spirit of
right?
it. Uh-huh. Yes.
Yes, yes. Um, Please take this opportunity to tell people about how you're operating with human design right now, what you offer, and where you can be contacted.
Oh, beautiful. So I just love to answer to two places, Instagram and email. Very old school and love simplicity. So
Mhm,
my Instagram is probably the best way to just direct message me. I love personal business, not automated. So if you
mhm,
send me,
mhm,
my Instagram is Brianna Anderson Marie. And I do a lot of different things through human design. I would honestly say that so right now I currently certify people to go through this process and understand the six pillars, the six systems, how they actually are interwoven, how they go together, so that other people can be the teacher. I
mhm.
don't believe that it's enough to have just one person teaching it. And so I certify people through a 6 month process through that. I also have created a human design library that takes well over 20 different concepts into short form video, but that's fun, similar to this podcast. And in that library, it's got 175 videos and PDFs
Wow.
and the resources. And just because I understand we all learn differently, whether you have an open head or a defined one. So there's lots of different ways that incorporate the concept, but in multiple ways and facets. So I have that digital course as well. That link for all of the ways they can work with me or go explore it or even know what the heck any of this is about. I also have a free webinar for everyone who is a beginner. So I love that if you're listening to this and you know nothing, I have a 2 hour free webinar and it's also listed on my link tree. So everything is just simply found on the link tree inside of my Instagram. So most people will start there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing. It sounds like you offer a lot of content for free.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, if you hold a vision where everyone needs to know it, money will never be the excuse. Just won't.
Yes. Yes.